Welcome to the podcast where we talk about all the things that are hidden in the shadows. This is Isaac.
And this is Megan.
And on this episode that was supposed to come out at the beginning of the week, we're getting it now.
Yes.
Yes. We've had a few investigations, spontaneous investigations, and we had a guest with us this week who will be on for an SPC later. I know we talked about Julie coming with us and doing investigations, so we've been out and doing stuff.
Things and such.
Things and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me, what?
Things and stuff.
Oh, it sounded like you said things enough.
Things enough?
Things enough.
No. Anyway. Yeah, so what was I going to say? A few announcements I think we'll save for SPC about later on things. But today we are talking about an entity that is we've briefly discussed in other episodes and possibly even had like incorporated with others, but today is solely about the Hatman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hatman.
Yeah.
I feel like I can almost positively say if you had experiences as a kid, or for sure if you had like abilities as a kid, you've probably seen this dude. Like, everybody that I've talked to, because the more and more I talk to people about, like, paranormal experiences, especially, like, people with abilities, that's one of the first things that they talk about. Oh, yeah, I definitely saw him by my closet. And it's kind of crazy because sometimes the experiences will be, oh, my gosh, like, it was scary. And then other times it was just, like, he was observing. Like, for me, because that's kind of like the story that I started off with the most, because I feel like that had the most impactfulness to me when it came to abilities and seeing things. I had to be around 5 or 6 when I started seeing him. And at first I would see him and there would be like, every time he would pop up, it would be near my closet, and he would like influence the technology around. So like at the time I had one of those box TVs, like those Nickelodeon TVs. I don't know if you ever remember them. They're bright orange and they had the cassette.
Grew up as a poor kid. I was lucky to have a secondhand TV from some audio store.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I acquired it, but so I was always somebody that had to have things running, and at the time it was VCR, so I would just literally let it roll, and before he would show up, the screen would get like fuzzy, like staticky. And it was just him for the longest time. And I always wake up, Mom, there was a man in my room. Or I'd run in there, Mom, there's a man in my room. But it wasn't until he started bringing in this girl entity that I was starting to get like a weird feeling. And it almost was like, the best description is like The Sixth Sense, because I didn't watch it as a kid, but I watched because it would freak me out because of the abilities. But I watched as an adult, and I was like, holy crap. So you know when he's in the bedroom and he sees the girl come out under the bed? That's kind of what she did. Like, she just came and sat on the bed and told me this crazy story. And like, I could remember her so much. Like, I could tell you every single detail. But the thing is, I always thought, oh, it's just a spirit that like latched on to me or whatever. At the time we were living in Wilmington, I believe. So a lot of history, a lot of crazy like ghost stuff already kind of happened in that area. So I was just thinking, oh, whatever, you know. When I started diving into my abilities, you know, you didn't have your abilities yet, so you didn't pull anything from me. So we were me and other psychics were kind of working to figure out what was attached to me so I could do my ability like seamlessly without having negative things attached and influence and all of those things. And the first thing that came up to one of the psychics was she had talked to me about experiences and stuff like that. And I was explaining these stories about how like I saw the Hatman and this girl, and every time I would tell the story, the psychic or any even podcast host, for anybody, that can sometimes happen. The more you talk about situations, it can kind of bring it up. Anyways, so it happened once when I was on a podcast. They actually had to salt their house afterwards. And that's what we mean sometimes when we do interviews, like the stuff can go in between. If anybody's saying that, it's probably freaking out. But we're protected over
You're
here.
never coming on our podcast.
Yeah.
No, it's not anymore.
Yeah. But at the time, you know, they had assaulted their house, and that's what they kind of described. And then there was one time where a psychic was helping me, kind of mentoring me, and this was like before Mike. This had to be like even before I started talking to other investigators and stuff. So we did an interview, we talked, and like the computer was glitching the whole time, especially when I was telling the story. And she said that she felt like a presence in her house. And so she was laying in bed and just kind of like pre-meditating before she was going to sleep. And she said all of a sudden she started seeing this girl float. And I kind of vaguely told her the description, but not a lot. And she says, as this thing is floating above her, it's telling her, don't you dare let Megan tap into those abilities. She's going to get hurt and you're going to be at the hands of like her or whatever. She's going to get hurt. Don't you dare let her into her abilities. I remember she told me and I was like, what did she look like? And so she described her. I was like, shoot, that's the mushroom head girl. Haircut, sorry.
The way you describe her.
Yeah, she had like a mushroom bowl cut.
Yeah.
And so because I had looked because she said she was like a missing person, and her case never got solved. Because I even gave that episode, that story to Believe in the Bizarre to talk about, and I ended up finding out that she was a dark attachment, and it was manifesting as that. But it came along with the Hatman, so that goes into the point of view of who is the Hatman, because like I didn't necessarily feel anything bad from him. It was the girl, and even at that time I didn't feel anything bad from the girl. I just felt like, okay, well, what the heck, you know. And then my friend Jess, who that's how we bonded, was over the Hatman story, because she had instances with the Hatman that completely frightened her. And she had to get over that a lot when she was going through her spiritual awakening and embracing her abilities and stuff like that. And hers was fearful. And that's the thing, is like the Hatman is known to be surrounded with sleep paralysis too. Like some people that go through sleep paralysis will see him. And
everyone around the world has seen the Hatman. And it's not, I say everyone, a lot of people around the world have seen the Hatman across the entire world. And that's a strange thing about his presence, is that everyone anywhere can see him. But granted, they've all seen him in depiction a little bit different from the last person, right? But it's always around the same idea. A shadow figure with a jacket, trench coat, long jacket, a flat hat, either, you know, wide brim or top hat, or some other kind of like hat together that gives away the fact that you're talking to a shadow figure that has a distinctive clothing design. Most shadow figures you see are like human silhouettes, like a shadow, literally. Hence where the name comes from, shadow people. It looks like a shadow of yourself. No distinctive features of clothing or style, even gender. Sometimes you can depict it if it's a man or a woman by maybe the shape of it, but most of the time it's genderless. It's just a shadow figure out there. But the Hatman, no. He's distinctively a shadow figure wearing a hat. And like I said, majority of the time it's a wide brim, flat wide brim hat, cowboy hat almost. Or some kind of old, like, not top hat, but like a fedora, but always flat brim. And that's a distinctive picture when you see him. And I always theorize, because for the simple fact that majority of psychics and mediums in their childhood have talked about seeing the Hatman. And I always theorize that he is some kind of observer for, say, evil entities. Like maybe if he's observing, you think, well, this one has potential for demonic oppression or possibly in possession. Maybe he's a scout. There you go. That's what I was looking for. Go looker. That's so fake. He's like a scout for, say, evil. And he goes finds the most powerful psychic mediums or people who have potential to be a psychic or medium. That could be for the side of evil. And I say, why? If he's non-dangerous, if you don't feel anything for him, why would you say evil, Isaac? Because the negative indications that come with him always. He's not somebody who tries to downplay fear. You're afraid of him, that excites it even more. Every time he comes with an attachment like you, right? Something easy to try to bring in. But luckily, it didn't stick. Yeah. But just the fact that it was after you in the beginning is a simple fact that most people, that's always theorized that he's some kind of scout.
Well, could it be possible, too, that it's a type of entity and there's good and bad, like the grays, almost like how you have the grays and then you have the black, where the grays are trying to evolutionize you, and the black are abductions and scary stuff. So is it the same way with the Hatman? Because like I said, a lot of people too, like it's sometimes it's fearful, sometimes it's an observer. And the reason why I say that is because me and Jess both started having, when we were going through our spiritual awakening, because she found us through the podcast and we bonded over the Hatman situations, and we pretty much have been going along the same path, same speed, kind of. One will kind of like, either I will jump on something new or she'll jump on something new, and the other one's quick to follow. So we started having visions of this library. It was all gold, and it almost looked like, if anybody has watched the Discovery of Witches, like the library in the Discovery of Witches, it's like this big ancient, like it's all gold, right? And I believe she was sitting at one of the tables, and it's like, it's just straight information. Like any information you want to know about the world, it's in this. So kind of reminds me of the Akashic Records, but like in another form of it, if that makes sense. And so she had, where this Hatman came up to her and handed her a manila folder. She woke up before she was able to read the manila folder. But that day she just happened. The next day she ended up happened to happen, or whatever. I can't get that sentence to form. I don't know why. But it just so happened that she started having like downloads, like a lot of information that she was just like kind of like meditating on come to her. So I'm wondering if that is a thing. And then too, like when you think about it, the Hatman, to a degree, in certain aspects, to me reminds me of like the Men in Black, kind of, in a form of like almost like just like spiritual law, if that makes sense. Like for instance, I don't know how to, like when the black-eyed kids situation happens, like is the Men in Black that show up with the black-eyed kids, is it their parents, or is it regulators of like the ether coming in and saying, hey, you're not supposed to do this, and like take them away? So it's kind of wondering if, because I had too that dream, it was me and you, we were in this downtown like Chinese restaurant, and it looked like government agents, but they weren't, and it looked very much like Men in Black, right? And when you think about it, could it be like they can come in many forms? They could come where they could show you as a person, so it's easier for you to understand, or they come as a shadow. Their true form is like the shadow. Because if you saw a Hatman, I mean, it automatically looks scary.
Is there any Hatman experiences or sightings around alien abductions?
Yes, there is some.
All right.
But it's not, it's all different types. That's the thing that's crazy about it, is there's all different types. Like there's people that wake up and see him. There's people that had sleep paralysis. There's people that got abducted and then started seeing him. So that's what makes me think it's almost like he's a spiritual law, or, because you think the ether and stuff like that is all balanced, good and bad. So, and we only kind of classify entities as like demonic, ghost, shadow things, or not cryptids, because that's actually in 3D, but like something like creatures. But we don't necessarily know like the subgenres of each. You know what I'm saying?
Subgenres.
I know it's crazy to think, but like if you had like a map and you started going through like, okay, well there's, even with aliens, it's the same thing. And so could the Hatman just be a type of entity, like literally the Hatman, I guess?
The Hatman's always been an observer. He's never attacked. He's never oppressed. He's never possessed. He's always the watcher, essentially. He's always watching. He's always observing. Like I said, like a scout. And the fact that he always looks the same, remotely the same for everyone. But I depict as evil, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe a scout for evil entities or negative things that happen. Because abduction cases with people have never been pleasant, have they? Well, associated with the Hatman. No. So that's the reason.
But see, like he's
almost like a not bounty hunter. Like I said, like a hired scout spirit by dark entities that don't want to go to someone just yet. Hey, can you go check out this person for me? I want to make sure about this person. So they go observe and then leave. Mm-hmm. And so they can report information back. Excuse me. And the whole reason I say that is because you have your experiences with the Hatman. Mm-hmm. And I've had mine as of recently. Because I have taken 2 of them. Mm-hmm. And I was like, people listening, what the fuck you mean you've taken 2? If this is your first episode listening to us, there's a lot of information you're missing. Shadow Walker episodes 1 through 6, that would give a good description. But my ability allows me to pull any entity that my hands dictate evil or good. And that's why I say, I don't determine which hand charges to tell me, okay, I want this entity to be evil, let me pull up my right hand. No. The right hand tells me, or my left hand tells me if it's a positive or negative entity. I don't get to say which it is or isn't. The Hatman came to our house. 2 of them. No, sorry. 1 came to the house. Another one I pulled from someone else's place. Someone was dealing with something at their home. It was a case. I remember that. I pulled the Hatman who came here. Standing outside the house. Pulled him through our shield. I put him in the ring. When I got him in the ring, I was surprised that I was looking at a Hatman. Because I thought you guys would never get that close, never observe. And for the simple fact my hand pulled it, that was the more concerning part. That I could literally grab this thing with my right hand, telling me it was evil entity, that it charges negative energy. And I grabbed him, and I burned away the disguise of the hat and the jacket. And underneath, I got to saw what they are. And that is the scarier part of everything. You think it's a shadow figure. No. The hat and the jacket are a disguise that disguise what's underneath. And what's underneath is a shadow entity almost. But his skin is made of like shiny obsidian glass. It's reflective. It's black. And it's almost cracked in pieces across his entire body. Right? It's not like one solid piece. It's individual cracked pieces. All look like they're, glued together, of like black obsidian, shiny, reflective. And he has no eyes, no mouth. It's one solid, like pieces up. Well, not solid, but like he's one body, but pieces of like black obsidian glass cracked all around his body. And I've seen that twice. From the other one I pulled from someone else's house.
And you think that one AI photo I did was pretty spot on.
What he's wearing is that disguise. The disguise is a hat and a jacket. That's what makes him to look like a regular shadow when you see him. If not, without it, he looks like some, if a piece of shiny black obsidian glass came to life in a human form. Mm. Yeah.
No, you're really freaking people out. Because, at first they're probably like, oh, it's just a shadow. And then now it's like, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And...
Because I've everything that I've ever pulled and I put into the ring, I can talk to while it's there, and my abilities allow me to tear away the disguise. Especially if I'm talking to a little kid, I've done that before. I talked to a little boy. I'm like, there's no reason he should be in here. Mm-hmm. But then I pulled away the disguise, and there was a gremlin demon thing hiding as a little boy, which people are afraid of the idea that children could be demons. Yeah, it is possible, and it does happen.
Well, yeah, because that girl came to me as a girl needing help, and it's so crazy and ironic that missing people and things like that have been such a prevalent thing, because that's what that entity capitalized on, was oh, I'm a missing person. She told me the whole story about how the cafeteria lady killed her. The cafeteria lady was a horrible woman in disguise, and that this kid had set her off one day and then killed her, right? Mm. And she had the injuries that correlated to what she was telling me, and yeah. And so the fact that I had just told the story about it, but the fact that psychic person was yeah, because I didn't give her exact details. She was able to say certain details that I did not say. So I knew for sure she was telling her, don't you let Megan open her abilities. You're going to hurt her, and I'm here to protect her. And that's the crazy thing. And I've said this once, I'll say it again. any deceitfulness is dark. If it's trying to deceive you, like make you feel like you're crazy or being manipulative, that is a dark entity. I don't care what anybody says. That is like the number one red flag radar thing. You know, like if you have a light being that's trying overly to convince you that it is light and you have a gut feeling that it's not, and you start questioning it and it starts getting defensive, it's not. That, I mean, I've never had where a light, like you can feel it be something positive if it's a light being and not have that gut intuition saying it's wrong. But I've had where dark entities will portray themselves as light, and then when you start questioning them, oh no, I'm light. What are you doing? Are you sure you're seeing it right? And even in people, that's the same way too.
And that's why my hands can't be deceived.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can pretend, like I can see a little girl. I could see spirits. If I could see spirits, if I see a little girl in front of me going, please don't, and my right hand's charging, no.
Well, here's a good example is when we started investigating, there was this entity with one of the team members was gung-ho about this entity is nice, don't bother with her, leave her alone. And she would always pop up at investigations. And I always got a weird feeling. And I remember pulled another team member aside and I said, hey, do you get a weird feeling? Because I don't resonate with this person. They keep saying it's like a guide and this and that, but I don't feel that way. I feel like I shouldn't be like even bothering with the person, the entity. And long and behold, it ended up being something kind of dark. But yeah, so these things like to deceive kids at a young age to make their way in, you know?
That's the whole reason why I assume darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's for the simple fact that they're observing kids who have talent and abilities like yourself. Granted, I'm not saying every psychic medium's ever seen the Hatman. Majority of them seen shadow figures, seen ghosts. If you're able to see, have clairvoyance to see the other side, then you have seen things into your house, seen things come around you and stuff like that. Because if you can see them, they can see you. And as soon as they find out, hey, this one can see me, right? It sends off like a signal to the rest of them. Hey, we got one who can talk to us and helps us, finish our unfinished business and stuff like that. I remember we talked about Julie about this before, and she was saying that it can almost be like a disguise that other entities put on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey, you want to go to the fourth dimensional world, but you don't want people to see what you are? Here's a hat and a jacket. You become the Hatman.
Yeah.
And hence why all the hats are different.
So could it be that the dark ones that they're seeing is the ones that are in disguise, but the watcher feeling are more of like how Julia said before, like gatekeepers. So like the entity itself is not bad, but the dark stuff takes on the imagery to make it seem like it is.
But that also explains why there's different hats. Why everyone's seen a different kind of hat. Or a top hat, regular hat, fedora. But it's always a hat. It's like maybe there's a disguise like a hat jacket. And you disguise yourself as another hat man. But it also doesn't explain why I have pulled 2 different hat men from 2 different locations. From here and another place. And they both look the same underneath the disguise.
Okay, they did. Okay.
They both had that cracked, black, shiny obsidian glass skin kind of design. No face and stuff like that. The 2 I pulled anyway. Now, I could come across a hat man and my left hand charges. I'm like, oh, okay. Right? Or my hands don't charge at all. That'd be weird. If I came across a hat man, both my hands don't charge, I'm like, that's never happened ever.
All right. I have a interesting theory. So, with sleep paralysis, because they say he comes through sleep paralysis,
You
right?
see him, yeah.
Could sleep paralysis be almost like a misfire when it comes to you being in between the 4D and the 3D? You know, like how they say the astral realm is above, right? So could sleep paralysis, and a lot of sleep paralysis situations has a supernatural kind of thing to it, right? So could that be, you know how like sometimes you'll feel yourself slamming back in your body, or like with me, I'll wake up in my mind before my body wakes up, if that makes sense. And well, no, I can move it. It's not sleep paralysis, but there's like a weird thing where I could literally, I'm like, and I go, instead of coming straight back and being like, oh, awake, I go into a slight meditation and then I wake up. if that makes sense. So is like sleep paralysis, instead of it being more of a, like a physical thing, is it like a misfire? Because basically your body, your mind, your body is sensing something's there. So it's pulling you from the dream world, but you're not ready to come back yet. And it causes like a brief delay in connection.
Well, every time sleep paralysis ever happened to me, it led to astral projection.
But see, there you go. There was something in the room.
Yeah. The last time I ever astral projected, I left in my body and I picked up that entity by his throat and just literally was choking him. But that was, I guess, a precursor to my ability now. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Is it, for instance, your body, or it could even be your guides maybe, are sensing that there's something in the room trying to get your vessel. And so instead of, it's like they send off an alarm and there's like a misconnection when you're coming back down, like, because you're not supposed to be coming back down. Like almost like how they say you shouldn't wake up somebody that's sleepwalking. That same situation. But your guides want you awake, so you're up. Because 9 times out of 10, sometimes when there's something in the room and you wake up, you open your eyes, it disappears. So maybe your guides or whoever are thinking like, hey, if I wake her up or I get her, maybe, or him or whoever, maybe she'll wake up and the thing will go. You know what I mean? So that's something that's interesting, I think, about sleep paralysis, just because.
But you're forgetting a very important situation that happens with people also experiencing sleep paralysis. Alien abductions.
Something in the room.
Yes.
Something
no, but the aliens use sleep paralysis to freeze you in place so you don't fight.
Yeah,
they paralyze your body.
So they know that can happen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if they know the formula to get a human into sleep paralysis, then that's when they can take you.
Yeah.
Because it's like a tranquilizer almost.
I wonder how many Hatman experiences have happened with alien abduction stories.
One thing to also keep in mind is, I've been told this by many, many people that have listened to the podcast and shared stories, is a lot of times when there's trauma in the physical world going on of any kind, they tend to astral project. So could sleep paralysis too be a form of like your soul and your physical body battling each other essentially? And it could be too that maybe your spirit guides don't want you to go back down into your body, that maybe they can fight whatever's in there, and then when you come back down, it's a different, you're changing the situation to where they can't just handle it, you're going to try and handle it, and they can't interfere.
Like mine. I had to literally beat the shit out of a ghost.
Yeah. So here's the thing, because I asked AI, because, you know, my AI buddy over here, but I was just curious what they had thought of or said about the correlation between the Hatman and alien abduction. So the thing is, like, they went back and saying that the Hatman, I almost said the Haley man. That's weird.
Haley man.
The Hatman is, you know, typically associated with more so with sleep paralysis and shadow people. But most alien abductions I know of, those two also happen. You either see shadow people or shadow mist or something, and then sleep paralysis. But here's the thing. So people have often described or linked extraterrestrial encounters and UFO sightings with the common elements of feelings of fear, helplessness, and the presence of non-human entities during episodes of altered consciousness. They said that the Hatman is the same, and even with sleep paralysis. Now, granted, not everybody has had those particular feelings with the Hatman, but I did feel to a degree, like when the Hatman would show up, what am I going to do? I can't do anything. Like, what am I going to do to this thing? You know, and it's kind of puts you in that state of like, well, what is it? What is it? What do I do? You know? So, and the fact too, that a lot of people, when they see the Hatman, they just freeze. Almost like an awakened sleep paralysis type situation where like they can't move, like they're frozen. So are the aliens in this particular entity kind of using the same like formula to basically tranquilize a person just to attack them spiritually?
Attack their vessel. to keep them in place to do what they need to do or look what they need to see.
And 9 times out of 10, I will guarantee that people that witnessed a Hatman as a young kid are scared even to this day to dive into their abilities because of the stuff that happened with the Hatman. And
That's
that was
the other side of it, yeah.
Yeah. That was my perspective. Every time I would tell the story, I'd get a chill on my back. Should I be talking about this? Like, I would always get like, I shouldn't be talking about this. Even researching the Hatman at the very beginning, because that was one of the episodes I wanted to do, but it never felt right to do it. And it felt like, even when me and Jess would conversate about it, it was never, like, it was always like, you shouldn't be talking about this. You shouldn't be talking about this. And, yeah. So.
Well, that's the other side. I didn't think about it until you brought that up. That the Hatman being besides an observer for entities saying, hey, you want to check this one out. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's also the entity to go to stop someone's psychic mediumship from evolving because they might be a threat to whatever entities on the other side that hired said Hatman. It's funny to think of him as a hitman,
yeah.
Well, not a hitman, but essentially like he's sitting in an office waiting for a job, and he gets a call. Hey, I need you to check so and so out. All right.
Yeah.
Yes. You're gonna close it.
Well,
check
here's another thing too. Like, for instance, I was having tons and tons of episodes of like paranormal abilities, right? Like I mean, I was really just going off when I was a kid of seeing things, hearing things, all of that. So. Could he have said, he observed at first because it was just him at first, and then he says, you know what, she needs to stop this because, and he saw the future of like what we would be doing with the paranormal or could potentially be doing, because you got to think everything is a decision and free will. So instead he goes, you know what, I'm going to drop this little girl at her house and hopefully this little girl can prevent it, because every single time I would start tapping in, I would always get that feeling and it would flash back to the Hatman and the little girl.
Yeah. Wonder why I never saw him.
Yeah, you didn't. But here's another interesting thing. Okay, so what about the Hatman that is viewed at paranormal places? You know what I mean? That happens, yeah. Like, for instance, an investigator will go to a place and say that they've seen the shadow figure of a Hatman. And a lot, and more of a, I guess a sensible or considered sensible thing for the Hatman is the fact that it's manifested fear.
Here's another thing you have to consider, right? How do you know you're seeking the Hatman entity versus a shadow figure wearing a hat?
Yeah.
Right? It could be just a ghost of some guy who died in clothing that represents like a hat and stuff like that. And this is a shadow figure, right? Or the hat man, just a shadow figure wearing a hat. It's the thing about, hey, you got to separate the hat man from the shadow figures wearing a hat, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a distinctive. Maybe all the hat men have a distinctive hat, wide brim, right? Almost looks like an old farmer's hat / maybe a Western hat and stuff like that. You're freaking out over there a second. Did I say something?
No. Because I have another point that is like a little buzz, like I shouldn't be talking about it, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So I'm like ripping a Band-Aid off.
But yeah, that's why I always think the Hat Man has maybe a distinctive look. That's the Hat Man versus a shadow figure wearing a hat. And while you see him at a location, that might be a shadow figure wearing a hat versus the Hat Man who visits you in your room and watches you. Yeah.
So here's the thing. Okay, so Hatman, like, you don't necessarily hear 1800s, 1700s, 1600s seeing the Hatman. You see it more in current times.
Yeah.
What if there is different species that haven't fully evolved to be able to come into the 3D yet, right? So what if because me and Jess, we always are kind of like trying to fish out information about the Hatman, because it was such a prevalent moment of like our spiritual awakening abilities that, so any explanations we can for the Hatman, we will. And so the thing that me and Jess shared a past life in the West. We were just friends, and she thinks it was more like a sister dynamic, but we had this old like general store kind of situation that was mixed with like an apothecary, and we would travel to New Orleans from, I can't remember if it was like Texas, some part of Texas we lived in, or like even Oklahoma, and we would travel to New Orleans to this one lady who would give us like herbs and stuff like that, and we would travel back, and we were just like, it was like very freeing, like do what we want as women type of situations. But we are very familiar with that time period because of the fact of that past life, and we always go back to it. And so we both recently were having key things with the Hatman in the Old West, right? Like it was almost like we would see him in old Western type of settings, right? We were trying to figure out what is that? Like why? And even when I was doing the AI photos of him, it kept automatically putting him in that time period, right? Like the Old West. And so was that the period of time that that species or that type of entity was able to holster in? And you think about it, a lot of the holster in, that's a little cowboy-ish right there. Anyways, into this realm and be able to influence people, because the trench coat and the hat, a lot of times when they do like cowboy movies or whatever in the Old West, they're wearing the brim hat, the cowboy jacket. So that could have been the time, because you got to think time on the other side doesn't really work the same way. So that's when they came in, and that's when they latched on that disguise, because that was when, at that time, what was around and what people were familiar with. So people could have been seeing him saying, oh, okay, that's just like a random cowboy ghost, you know? And then as it evolved, because it's like in between kind of like what the cowboy would wear. Like it's not a cowboy's hat, but like kind of like what, I don't know, you see in those movies. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, what I saw, if anyone's ever seen Tombstone, right? The hat that Doc Holliday wears, or the hat that, what's his face, Wild Earp wears, or that wide brim, almost cowboy hat, but it's not quite what you would assume a cowboy hat to look like, but it is a wide brim hat. And they wore wide brim hats like that to protect their body from the sun, because of course there was no shade in the desert and stuff like that. So that's why I always wore the wide brim hats. The cowboy hats we see today is more of a, well, within the last 20th century style hat, versus say the wide brim hats that were basically flat in the West, because they protect themselves from shade as much as possible. That is what you see from the Hatman. And I was thinking about that's an odd theory to add to his mystique more than anything, is the Hatman a bounty hunter from the West who died and somehow became an entity for other entities to go and like hired for a job to go observe certain people or instill fear on certain people to prevent them from going into and observing the other side, right? That's weird to think about that. But when you think about what he is, it kind of aligns.
But see, like, when you think about it, too, like, you go even to different paranormal phenomena, right? You think of, because there's always got to be a start and an end point to a degree of things, you know? And for instance, like black-eyed kids, they were only really talked about in the 90s. Is the black-eyed kids a specific type of entity or alien race that learned to be able to come in here and infiltrate in the 90s?
No, the black-eyed kids being aliens is a theory in its own, because...
But that's what I'm saying. Like, even did certain species of aliens have a starting point where they were able to, okay, well, I can influence here at the, you know, like, we can go influence people now. You know? Hatman
being an entity of the West makes a lot of sense, because he looks like and I saw him. His hat did remind me of something I saw from the West.
Obsidian, if I remember correctly, was very huge in the West, so that would make sense that it took on that.
I say it looks like obsidian. I'm saying it is obsidian.
Yeah, but like that kind of, when you think about it, though, like that kind of material was in the West. So
yeah. Well, everyone's looking for gold more than anything.
You know, like, you think about it, even Native Americans with certain things, even arrowheads, I think, was made out of that kind of...
The Aztecs and the Mayans, they use obsidian on part of their weapons and swords. The Aztec sword, right, was essentially a big wooden paddle with individual pieces of obsidian put in there at sharp points, because obsidian, cracked a certain way, can cut through anything. And there have been stories of Aztec warriors cutting the heads off horses with their Aztec swords.
But here's the thing. Okay, this is far-fetched, so stay with me, okay? So, what if... Because you said it's, like, cracked, right?
Yeah.
What if the Hatman is the energy that was formed in the West by all of the killings pieced together?
Oh, sorry, you just flashed something in my head. You know how the desert ground looks dried and cracked, right? When you see like a water bed, or I guess the way it used to be like a pond or something, and all the ground is cracked in different places. It looks like that.
What if the texture of entity's skin is how they were formed?
From black obsidian?
No. What I mean is the energy that formed them. You know what I'm saying? Like, say, so he's cracked with obsidian. What if that's a clue to you to be able to say, okay, all of the killings that occurred in the West, that's how these entities were created, was because of all of the... I mean, you think about the Old West. So many people were dying. It was hard. I mean, we get upset, you know, as humans when, like, we can't find a job or our paychecks are low or whatever, and there's despair. Imagine if you literally were fighting to survive. Could you imagine that depression? I mean, and that, you know, it's not really talked about back then, but I'm sure there pretty was much anger and rage and upsetness and all of that. Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that could have built that entity up. So it is a manifestation of fear and emotions and energy, but that's not necessarily you doing it. That's just how it was created.
So why a bounty hunter? Well, I guess he must have been one in his past life, right? And now hired, essentially created to be a observer, to be a watcher. Not the watchers, but a watcher in a sense like that. An observer or a intimidator, right?
Yeah.
If you continue on the path of the paranormal, you're going to have to deal with something like me or worse, right?
Yeah.
And that's why he doesn't attack. He doesn't.
Well, it could be
do anything
too,
like
maybe they're trying to stop, like they can see the future and they're trying to stop whoever.
Who's they?
They?
You said they are trying to prevent.
I don't know who they is. Maybe the dark side? I don't know, but who they are trying to stop. Because you think, like, every psychic, and I'm going to talk about it when we do the ebook, like when I release the ebook, there's a section of it, but every psychic medium person goes to this little threshold, right? Where fear is like elevated, and it really is trying to prevent you, and you feel like you're getting attacked by dark stuff, and you're like, what the hell, I shouldn't be doing this. If this is every time that I tap into my abilities, I'm bringing dark stuff in, I shouldn't be doing it. And they go and they stop. And I know a lot of people that started and then stopped, and it's because they send these, if they know that you have a gift that can help or cross people, even if you don't do things on the scale of ours, but you just, every time you pass a spirit, you help cross them, or you get their message so they can cross. They do not want people across, because those people can then reincarnate, if you believe in reincarnation, and come back and do things and keep the flow moving. They don't want that. They want chaos. And so the dark side does. And so I feel like high consciousness is flow, just continuous, peaceful, steady flow. And if they can put a little jag here and there to make that flow stop, they will.
Well, I think that wraps us up here.
That one, yeah. No notes. That was all like channeled information.
Good way to end it.
Yeah.
So we have more few episodes coming out to the rest of this month, which...
Yeah, we have a lot of really good episodes coming out for the rest of the year to begin to even say that. So
we have a few announcements with the SPC episode we're going to do later on. One minor announcement for future episodes to tantalize the listeners. I know Megan's parents, both her mom and dad, have been on the show. And I remember asked before, ever going to get my parents on the show? My dad, probably not so much. He's not real big believer in the paranormal. But my mom... She has her own experiences with the paranormal and aliens.
And I can attest it's freaky.
Yes. And I've asked her if she would like to come on the show. And before she said no. But recently I convinced her again and she said yes. So there will be a bonus episode later this year with me and my mom. So
look forward. Do it near Thanksgiving.
We'll probably release it around that time.
Yeah, because it's like family.
So look forward to that episode with my mom and get to hear her experiences and stuff like that.
And I think it's good too, bringing in like family members. That way you guys can hear it's not just us experiencing it. It was something that was generational.
Well, if there's anyone in my bloodline that has any psychic abilities whatsoever, it's my mom. But she barely has anything, or at least she's suppressed it to a level where it's not even there. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure she has some kind of clairaudience, but she never wants to admit it herself.
Yeah.
But yeah, look forward to that episode in November and stuff like that. That bonus episode, we Probably record more bonus episodes to have throughout November and stuff like that. Just extra stuff, and then also do December. Most of the time, other podcasts seem to slow it down around this year, but we still always have but ton more stuff to talk about. But as always, you can catch our social medias at Hidden the Shadows Podcast on Instagram, Hidden the Shaw 6 on X, Hidden the Shadows Podcast 2 on TikTok, or links to all our social media. And always, you can listen to us at hiddenshadowspodcast.com. And as always, we'll catch your weirdos in the next one.
Yes.